From his childhood, Harutora was forced to live as a poor stinky Reddit user by his father, who placed a strong curse on him to keep his powers hidden. However, after falling in love with a mid-girl, Harutora unlocks his true destiny as the heir of the most powerful family. The following day, Harutora and Taoji head towards home when Harutora is greeted by a flat girl called Hokuto. After eating ice cream like a starving pig, Hokuto grabs Harutora by the face and asks him if he has decided to become an Onmyo mage. Harutora averts his eyes and tells Hokuto that he doesn't want to become an Onmyo mage, which upsets Hokuto as she asks Harutora to reconsider, stating that he is part of the Tsuchimikado family and should become an official state Onmyo mage. Tired of Hokuto's constant lectures, Harutora tells her that he is just from a poor branch family, and besides, it's not like he can sense spiritual presence. After bidding goodbye to Hokuto, Taoji tells Harutora that he believes he has talent and a nice rear. Before Taoji can ask him to oil up and lie flat on his bed, Harutora quickly takes his leave. While on his way, Harutora stumbles upon Natsume and asks her what she is up to. Natsume reveals that since she has a duty to become the next heir of the Tsuchimikado family, she doesn't have time to chat with ugly losers like him. This upsets Harutora's little man ego, and he calls Natsume an ugly witch from the mountains of Azkaban. Natsume doesn't take the insult kindly and tells Harutora that he can spend his life as a dirty wanker while she will become a major girl boss. With that, she takes off, leaving Harutora to think about his miserable life. The following day, Taoji arrives to meet Harutora, who begins to rant about the traditions of the Tsuchimikado family. He reveals that someone from the branch family has to become the familiar of someone from the head family, and expresses his relief over not being talented, as he would have to see Natsume's ugly face on the regular. Later, the boys head to the firework festival and are surprised to see Hokuto in a kimono, given she is one of the bros. During the event, the boys are greeted by a girl who addresses Taoji, thinking he's Natsume Tsuchimikado. Taoji tells her that he's just a regular while Harutora is a Tsuchimikado. He also recognizes the girl as the youngest of the 12 divine generals, the prodigy Suzuka Dairenji. Curious as to what an Onmyo mage would want from the Tsuchimikado family, Harutora asks Suzuka to reveal her business, and she does. Suzuka tells him that she wants him for the great magic that was performed by Yaku Tsuchimikado called the Taisen Fukan ritual. Taken aback by Suzuka's words, the boys take a step back in fear when all of a sudden, they find themselves surrounded by the Magical Investigation Bureau, who tell Suzuka that she's under arrest for using the forbidden magic. Summoning her Asura, Suzuka easily gets rid of the bugs. As she captures Harutora, Hokuto appears on the scene. Hearing Hokuto call Harutora by his name, Suzuka realizes that she has been fooled, and as a payback, she kisses Hokuto and leaves him with a message for Natsume. With Suzuka gone, Hokuto begins to ugly cry. She tells Harutora that she is upset over how he didn't chase after her like an ugly simp and was even kissing another guy. Confused by Hokuto's reaction, Harutora asks her why she is yapping like his mom. Hokuto then tells Harutora that she is hurt because she just saw her crush kissing a fatherless girl. Sometime later, Taoji asks Harutora if he has been able to contact Hokuto, but Harutora reveals that Hokuto hasn't been responding to his texts. Not really giving a fat F, Taoji asks Harutora if he knows about the last ritual performed by Yaku Tsuchimikado. Harutora states that the great spirit disaster caused by Yaku is in every textbook, so of course he knows. He goes into detail about how the experiment took place during World War II, but since it failed, his family was disgraced. Recalling what Suzuka said about Taisen Fukan, Taoji tells Harutora that the Great Spirit method caused a lot of damage. He also informs Harutora that many mages seem to think that Yaku has reincarnated himself as one of his bloodline, a descendant from the Tsuchimikado family. Realizing that Natsume could be Yaku's reincarnation, Harutora begins to wonder if it will make him twink if he decides to clap Natsume's cheeks in the future. Later, Harutora meets up with Natsume when all of a sudden, an insect pops out of his mouth and stings Natsume. As Natsume falls, she tells Harutora that her spiritual power has been taken away from her. In that moment, Harutora realizes that Suzuka kissed him not because she has the hots for him, but because she wanted to take down Natsume. After sending Natsume to safety, Harutora goes into hiding as Suzuka arrives. He witnesses her taking down several Onmyo mages, and after her fight, Natsume hears Suzuka talking to her familiar, asserting how she will bring back her older brother. It doesn't take long for Suzuka to notice Harutora, who tells the girl that he knows how it must feel to lose a sibling. Suzuka quietly reveals that since she was a child, her parents conducted horrible experiments on her and her brother which caused his death. Now, with Natsume's spiritual powers and her life as an offering, she can bring back her brother from the dead. As Harutora tries to stop Suzuka, she sends her Asura to attack him. Harutora, thinking he's done for, closes his eyes like a wimp only to find Hokuto taking the hit instead. Seeing Hokuto die, Harutora finds Natsume and asks her to make him her familiar. Natsume then performs a ritual binding Harutora to herself, which also gives Harutora the ability to become a spirit seer. After completing the ritual, Natsume and Harutora quickly make their way to the altar where Suzuka is about to perform the revival ritual. However, upon reaching, Natsume and Harutora find themselves in a bit of a pickle as Suzuka employs her loyal soldiers to deal with them. Harutora then uses the self-defense sword and manages to fight with the monsters on an equal footing. Unfortunately, during the battle, Harutora loses his balance and is about to become a pancake when Natsume calls upon the guardian dragon of the Tsuchimikado family. With the help of the dragon, Harutora gets to see another day. Natsume then uses her blood to remove the seal of the sword, making it an enemy-destroying sword instead. However, despite infiltrating the barrier, Natsume and Harutora are unable to stop the ritual as they are good-for-nothing losers. In the meantime, Suzuka revives her elder brother, who grabs her by the throat the moment he regains consciousness. And since Harutora is one of those sickeningly nice protagonists, he immediately rushes to save Suzuka. With the ritual ending unsuccessfully, Suzuka asks Harutora to kill her, but he turns down her request and tells Suzuka that she should hug Truck-kun herself. Later on, Natsume also informs Harutora that Hokuto was someone's familiar, and there might be a chance for him to see her again. This surprises Harutora, but he smiles at the thought of clapping Hokuto's cheek one day. The following day, Harutora tells Taoji that he has decided to move to Tokyo in order to be closer to Natsume. Taoji asks him if he will give him a parting whack-whack, which makes Harutora catch the train faster than ever. Arriving at Tokyo, Harutora sees Natsume dressed like an ugly boy. When Harutora asks Natsume about her terrible fashion choice, she reveals that this is the tradition the head of the family must follow. To everyone's surprise, Taoji follows Harutora to Tokyo, revealing that he has always been a spirit seer. Hence, he will also be joining them. As Taoji and Harutora enroll in Onmyo Prep, they fail to accept that a school can be that cool. Upon entering, the artificial familiars, Alpha and Omega, register their spiritual energy and advise the boys to devote themselves to become good Onmyo mages so they can die quickly and rid the world of trash. Then, a freaking cat guides them to the principal's office, who introduces herself as Mio Kurahashi, and tells Harutora to prepare himself for getting special attention, as everyone here believes Natsume to be the reincarnation of Yaku. Mio then asks the boys about their opinions on Yaku. Harutora says some stupid crap, but Taoji goes in depth, explaining how Yaku had his plus points too, like his creation of Imperial Onmyo magic. Mio then reveals that Yaku was an ordinary human being like them, yet there are some hippies called Yaku devotees who hail him as a supreme being. A knock interrupts their lame conversation, revealing Jin, their homeroom teacher. Upon entering the class, a fatherless girl called Kyoko tells Jin that she won't accept Harutora as her classmate, as he's using his family name to transfer in the middle of the school year. Natsume quickly tells Kyoko that it's not her fault, she comes from old money and should simply suck it. Later, the boys head to get more information on Kyoko from a boy called Tenma. He informs them that Kyoko comes from an influential family and is the granddaughter of Mio, and she is also the daughter of the current head of the Onmyo agency. After school, Harutora summons the familiar given to him by his father. A creature out of a furry's wet dream appears in front of him and introduces herself as Kon. The next day, Kyoko gets into a tussle with Harutora again. Seeing them at each other's throat, Jin announces a battle of the familiars. Being a familiar himself, Harutora partakes in the match with Kon. However, despite his best efforts, Kyoko easily defeats him like he's some pesky bug. Surprisingly, after going toe-to-toe with Kyoko, Harutora gains a little popularity as his friends congratulate him for having balls of steel. In fact, later on, Kyoko apologizes to Harutora for acting on her feelings. After accepting her apology, Harutora asks Kyoko if she was using him to get to Natsume. Shocked by this, Kyoko admits that she is mad fruity for Natsume, also revealing that she has met Natsume before. Noticing the surprise on Harutora's ugly face, Kyoko reminds him that the Kurahashi family used to be a branch family of the Tsuchimikado family. Harutora further inserts his Pinocchio nose into their business by asking Kyoko about what went down between her and Natsume. Kyoko, believing Natsume to be a boy like everyone else, reveals that Natsume forgot about her and she was just jealous when she saw him getting close to Natsume. Harutora assures Kyoko that his relationship with Natsume is purely based on flexible conditions. All of a sudden, Natsume arrives and cusses Harutora for goofing around when all of a sudden, she's attacked and kidnapped by a Yaku devotee. Tenma reveals to the gang that Natsume has been attending daily investigating meetings as she was constantly getting pestered by Yaku devotees. In the meantime, the main investigator reveals himself as a Yaku devotee to Natsume. As Harutora and the gang arrive, the crazy devotee unleashes an ogre at them. Once the confrontation unfolds, the investigator takes off, realizing that he can't control the ogre. Natsume summons the guardian dragon who quickly takes care of the ogre. The next day, Kyoko tells Harutora that she's into Natsume. Harutora internally facepalms, knowing that Natsume is a girl in real. While passing the boys' dorm, a bunch of yaoi fangirls catch Harutora and Natsume in an inconvenient position. Wanting to write some steamy fanfics, the girls quickly capture pictures and run off. Thanks to that, the whole school starts to view Harutora's group as a crazy twink trio. After that unfortunate incident, Harutora complains about not doing something thrilling ever since he came to Tokyo, even though he was literally fighting for his life yesterday. Harutora begins to nag Natsume like an unhappy wife about how he needs to relax. In the end, Natsume caves and the two decide to do some shopping tomorrow. However, when the day comes, Harutora and Natsume end up fighting as Harutora unwittingly tells Natsume that he should have just gone shopping with Taoji instead. This upsets Natsume, who reminds Harutora that he was the one who invited her. Their heated debate leads to Natsume entering a district that is known to be a place where many couples have created their babies. All of a sudden, the crazy yaoi fangirls enter the area, causing Natsume and Harutora to seek shelter in one of those love hotels. Kan appears in the room and informs the two that their teacher and their friends are all trying to find out whether they are getting down and dirty, with their dignity and their future kids' dignity on the line. Harutora calls up Taoji for help, who helps them with the sticky situation. Later on, Jin uses one of his familiars to capture the investigator. As Principal Mio arrives on the scene, Jin asks her about why she let him in the school when she knew he was a devotee. Mio reveals that it was done in order to gain information on the group that dispatched the investigator. With the annual exams approaching, Natsume makes sure that Harutora's remaining 2 brain cells are prepared. Unfortunately, with his room temperature IQ, Harutora ends up doing badly on the exam. Natsume then assures him to simply do well in the physicals. In the meantime, Mio tells Taoji that they'll be performing a purification ritual on him, given that he still suffers from the aftermath of the spiritual disaster that took place 2 years ago. Taoji expresses his annoyance over the matter, revealing that he doesn't like to be known as a victim. In a club, Jin meets up with one of the 12 divine generals of the Magical Investigation Bureau, Amami Daisen, who introduces Jin to Harada Atsune. Recognizing Jin as the former divine general known as the Shadow, Harada begins to talk about the spiritual disaster terrorist attack and briefs the gentleman on how it was conducted by the Twin Horn Syndicate, who used the Ghost Division as a front. Continuing on, Harada states that the leader, Shido Darenji, lost his life during the attack while the Ghost Division was disbanded. Jin cuts the conversation short and asks the men why he was summoned. Harada then informs Jin that the Twin Horn Syndicate is planning something big. On the day of the practical exam, a member of the Twin Horn Syndicate, Mutobe Chihiro, initiates another spiritual attack. As an ogre terrorizes the students of Onmyo Prep, a divine general arrives on the scene. The students observe him and come to realize that the general must have a lot of unresolvable trauma and is probably a loser orphan. The general reveals his name as Kagami Ryuji, and after assaulting the ogre, he turns to harass the students. While displaying peak fatherless energy, Kagami unravels Taoji's head wrap, revealing ogre horns. After he fell prey to the spiritual disaster attack, Taoji transformed into an ugly abomination, otherwise known as half-ogre. Unlike Shrek the friendly ogre, Taoji was an absolute evil to society and everyone around him. In present time, Kagami tries to exorcise Taoji for being a hideous ogre, but Natsume and the rest gang up on him in an attempt to save Taoji from the fatherless general. Luckily, another general arrives on the scene and takes Kagami's orphan hindquarters back to inspect the crime scene. In the meantime, Taoji is transferred to the hospital where Harutora's father works. Harutora also apologizes to their friends for keeping Taoji's identity a secret. Later on, Mio informs the group that Natsume is to be transferred to the exorcism department as everyone believes the attack is conducted by a devotee. She also tells them that Taoji has escaped from the hospital. Natsume tells Harutora to go after Taoji while she'll be accompanied by Kyoko. Following Natsume's orders, Harutora finds Taoji, who unleashes his inner ogre, while Natsume and Kyoko are taken under the protection of Harada and Kagure. As the battle between Harutora and Taoji unfolds, Harutora reminds Taoji that there's much more to his life now than his darkness, which allows Taoji to overcome his inner monster. Meanwhile, at the Exorcist department, the generals learn about multiple spiritual attacks over the city. Wanting to catch the ogre terrorizing the innocent civilians, Kagure gets on his bike. Natsume hops at the back, stating that he will need her dragon guardian to tackle the boss-level ogre. In the meantime, Taoji regains consciousness and is greeted by Mio, who informs him that she was the one who loosened the seal on his ogre. The reason being, she wants Taoji to be able to control the ogre instead of hiding from it. Furthermore, Mio tells Taoji that the fatherless punk rock, jamming to Nirvana songs, uses the power of captured ogres to fight. On the other hand, Natsume and Kagure are greeted by Mutobe. Natsume tells Kagure that she and Harutora will take care of the ogre, leaving him in charge of Mutobe. Mia gives Taoji the Tsuchimikado's familiar Yukikaze so he can help his friends. In the meantime, the ogre beats the crap out of Kon, causing Harutora to worry about her. Taoji channels his inner ogre and gives Harutora the staff needed to destroy the ogre. With Natsume's purification ritual, the gang manages to eliminate the ogre. As Kagami observes the scene, he begins to plot something devious, but Jin appears from behind and warns him that if he lays hands on his students, he will suffer some serious stitches. Kagami laughs and tells Jin that he can't wait for the day when he'll finally kick him down. Jin returns his retort by telling Kagami that he must suck balls if he can't kick down a man with one leg. All of a sudden, a car approaches the students. The man inside rolls down his window and tells them that he'll meet them again and disappears after revealing his name as the man Ashia. After 1 month, Onmyo Prep welcomes new students. As Mio announces Suzuka's name, Natsume, Harutora, and Taoji's mouths fall on the floor. Suzuka takes the stage and greets everyone in the most angelic voice possible, making Harutora wonder about just what happened to Satan's baby. As Suzuka locks eyes with Harutora, a sinister smile creeps up on her face and she reveals in front of everyone that Harutora was her first kiss. This shocks everyone, as Suzuka is not only one of the 12 divine generals, but also a prodigy. Later, Kyoyuko and the whole school encircle Harutora to ask him why Suzuka would kiss his dusty broke boy. All of a sudden, Natsume rises and grabs Harutora from the crowd to have a chat. In the meantime, Jin and Kagure discuss Suzuka's arrival and reach the conclusion that she was sent as a punishment for her childish antics last year. As Harutora tries to explain the whole kiss fiasco, Natsume tells him that she's not interested in knowing who kissed his frog-shaped face and expresses her concern over Suzuka unraveling her identity as a girl. Harutora assures Natsume that he'll talk to Suzuka. So the following day, he finds Suzuka to confront her, but before he can talk about Natsume's identity, Suzuka reveals that she's eager to meet Natsume. This leads Harutora to believe that Suzuka is not yet aware of Natsume's alt personality, so they decide to hide from Suzuka. However, after 3 days, Natsume and Harutora reach their limits. Harutora goes to talk to Suzuka, who ends up bursting in tears over what she did with Hokuto. Harutora assures her that everything is okay, as Hokuto was just some ugly side character anyways. All of a sudden, Suzuka spots Natsume and recognizes her as the priestess from that night. Her face turns dark as she makes it her life mission to annoy Natsume and Harutora. Harutora and Natsume's day begins with Suzuka working them like they are disposable plates. As Harutora tries to talk to Suzuka, she threatens him about unveiling Natsume's true identity, which shuts Harutora up quickly. For the next few weeks, Harutora and Natsume continue to run like dogs for Suzuka. At the end of the day, Harutora notes how Natsume has started to look like a model running low on coke, while Natsume also observes that Harutora has started to look like a dead fish. Suzuka then decides to torture Natsume and Harutora by trying to force herself into their rooms. Harutora lets her in, and after snooping around his stinky room, Suzuka decides to head to Natsume's room, but Natsume puts up a good fight to protect the secrecy of her place. As Suzuka almost manages to get her way, Natsume summons the guardian dragon and tells her to protect the room with her life. The next day, Kon is unable to remove her physical form, which causes a lot of strain on Harutora's spiritual energy. At the same time, Kon decides to protect Harutora by becoming one with the shadows, but obviously she's an admonition between human and a fox, so she fails miserably. The whole school begins to panic, thinking that a tiger has sneaked into the school. The matter gets so serious that a divine general is called. Kagura assesses that a familiar must be on loose and decides to kill it for the sake of others' safety. In the meantime, Suzuka decides to help Kon, but the two end up getting discovered by Jin. After getting slightly reprimanded for letting his familiar run amok, Harutora thanks Suzuka for her help. As the students of Onmyo Prep prepare themselves for a field trip, Harutora and Natsume express their joy over finally being away from Satan's child. Arriving at the rural side of Japan, Kyoko asks Harutora about Taoji. He informs her that Taoji will meet up with them after his father is done examining him. Shortly after their arrival, the smiles on Natsume and Harutora face completely vanish as Jin announces that Suzuka will be joining them for the training. Once the familiar training finishes up, Taoji arrives and disses Suzuka's cooking skills. After roasting Suzuka, Taoji reveals that he wants to talk to her. In the meantime, Harutora, having a hard time manipulating his familiar, comes across his senpai who digs furries. Using Kon as bait, Harutora asks the senior if it's possible for a person to mask a familiar as a human being. Suzu informs him that only an expert can do that and then asks Harutora to let her have Kon, but Harutora tells her to take her furry-loving fetish back to Discord where she'll be validated. Simultaneously, Taoji transforms into his half-ogre form and tells Suzuka that he's aware her father was one too. However, having no intentions of talking about the past, Taoji asks Suzuka to help them fight against the Yaku devotees. Suzuka then reveals that her father was part of the group called Twin Horn Syndicate and also informs the group that she has reasons to believe that many members of the Twin Horn Syndicate are working undercover in Onmyo Prep. Natsume then asks her if she's really Yaku's reincarnation. Suzuka tells her that by wearing the raven coat, they'll know that for sure. After saying that, Suzuka refuses to help them further. The next day, Kyoko casually tells Harutora that the one who was controlling Hokuto must be good as he never noticed her being a familiar. Suzuka arrives on the scene and tells him that only Natsume is capable of doing that. This surprises Harutora, but later, he notices the ribbon he got for Hokuto on Natsume's hair. The next day, during classes, Harutora avoids Natsume like she's a sick child. This upsets Natsume, who turns to Taoji for answers. Taoji reveals that Harutora confessed that he liked Hokuto, which means he likes her. However, this doesn't soothe Natsume's nerves as she struggles to confess her own feelings for Harutora. Taoji sighs upon realizing that he's stuck between an uninteresting love story. In the meantime, Tenma walks home like he's in a sad music video. He thinks back to the conversation he had with Jin, who told him that he doesn't have the family jewels to become a pro mage and should consider sending out applications to McDonald's. Arriving at his home, Tenma is greeted by Harada. He tells Tenma that he's here to inquire about an old familiar that was developed by his mother. Tenma responds back by telling Harada to contact their company as he doesn't know crap about it. Before taking his leave, Harada secretly plants a talisman on Tenma. In the meantime, Demand's familiar informs Kagura that the Twin Horn Syndicate is coming to collect the Raven Coat. Thanks to the warning, the mages gather together to discuss their next move. After the meeting, Kagura reaches out to Miyachi Iwao, first-class Divine General, and informs him to increase the security on Onmyo Prep as he believes Demand will attack the school. The next day, as promised, Demand strikes by sending armored demon soldiers at Onmyo Agency while he himself enters the school. Almost instantly, Demand is greeted by Mio's familiar, who politely yet firmly tells him that the Raven Coat isn't at Onmyo Prep, but Demand insists on looking for it. Mio tells him that he's being impolite, but Demand retorts back, saying that he doesn't wish to be polite and unleashes his dark energy. Demand then faces Harutora's gang and uses his magic to force his way into the cafeteria. Kon quickly hands Harutora his staff and informs him that the place is crawling with demon soldiers. Seeing the chaos unfold, Tenma admits that it's all his fault as he was the one who weakened the barrier from inside. Suzu tells him that he's not at fault as he was up against Demand. Kyoko agrees and says that he should save his sad boy act for his therapist later or dye his hair blue, as right now fighting the demon soldiers is important. Mio's familiar arrives and tells the kids to make their way up to the rooftop. As Taoji and Suzuka help the rest to pave the path, Harutora tries to score some underage giant by telling Suzuka that he could totally fall for her. Mio then opens up the secret passage to the rooftop, which inevitably gets discovered by Demand, who manages to imprison Natsume's guardian dragon. Jin enters the scene to battle Demand and is able to free the guardian from the old man's grip. As the fight ensues, Jin unleashes his power, shocking the students as for the first time, they realize that they have a cool badass teacher. During the fight, Jin realizes that Demand is a rouge ghost, and with Kagura's help, he manages to capture him. But before Demand can reveal his secrets, Harada ice-skates him to hell. After the attack led by Demand, The students of Onmyo Prep prepare themselves for exorcism training. Harutora finds himself up against a professional exorcist, Edu. Remembering the spirit disaster spell of Jin, Harutora tries to mimic it but fails miserably. Later on, Natsume and Harutora decide to stop by their ruined school when they cross paths with a girl named Takiko-sama who introduces herself as a student of Onmyo Prep. For some unknown reasons, Takiko instantly recognizes Natsume and Harutora. Natsume then asks Takiko what she's doing on the rooftop, and she reveals that she's here to see the heavenly altar of the Teizen Fukun ritual. Since the ritual is supposed to be a secret of the Tsuchimikado family, Natsume and Harutora sternly ask her about her true identity. However, Takiko remains mysterious but discloses to them that Onmyo Prep was once Yaku's own private school. After acquiring that knowledge, Natsume, Harutora and Taoji decide to search up old records of Yaku. Arriving at the disheveled library, Natsume and Taoji begin to dig up, but Harutora, who has never ever seen the sight of books, ends up dozing off. The trio then comes across a record of an alumna named Ryu Saitome. The trio decides to visit Jin and is accompanied by Suzuka, Tenma and Kyoko. Arriving at the hospital, they ask him about Ryu as they were in the same class. After a moment of surprise, Jin reveals that Ryu is actually Suzu, and they should be wary of her. The next day, the Onmyo agency infiltrates office spaces to terminate anyone affiliated with the Twin Horn Syndicate. In the meantime, Harutora and the gang come to learn that they'll be guarded by the raging maniac Kagami. As Kagami arrives, he brings a twink boy along with him. At first, the group thinks that the twink boy is to keep Kagami's Excalibur warm, but they later learn from Suzuka that the creep is called Shaver and is one of Kagami's forbidden familiars. In the meantime, Makihara, a man in charge of keeping the Yaku devotees safe, announces that a series of spiritual disasters will occur and petitions the devotees to flee as the exorcists will eradicate them. As the Hydeal game of cat and mouse ensues, Makihara contacts Harada for further guidance, who appears behind him whilst holding a gun. After shooting Makihara, Harada tells him that he doesn't know the full truth, hence leaving him alive will put the grand plan in jeopardy. Unfortunately, Harada gets discovered by Amami, and a fight ensues between them. Right when Harada's familiars are about to send the old man to the pearly gates, Harada stops and reveals that he's not like the brainwashed Yaku devotees, as his purpose is to realize Yaku's final wishes. This surprises Amami, who asks Harada about Yaku's devotees in more details. Harada informs him that the devotees are divided into two groups, one being the Twin Horn Syndicate and the other being the Onmyo Prep, who was created because Yaku desired to raise new Onmyo mages. Midway, Harada asks himself why he's telling all the details to Amami like he's his OnlyFans girl that only listens to him to get money out of him. Amami then reveals that he is now under his spell. The last thing Harada realizes is that Amami is no different than his manipulative OnlyFans girl. Just as Amami thinks his work is done, Harada turns into Takiko. Meanwhile, Edu reveals to Natsume and the gang how Makihara and Muto were his class fellows and all they discussed was Yaku. He tells the group that while he's not a devotee himself, he understands them, and then asks Natsume to fill an umbrella-like item with her energy as a peace offering to the devotees. When Natsume refuses to do so, Edu apologizes and takes his leave. However, within seconds, Shaver appears and slays him. Before dying, Edu releases the miasma from the object, causing havoc. As the monsters appear on the site, Shaver begins to have a brain rot and turns to kill Harutora's gang. Taoji appears in his ogre mode to hold back Shaver's assault. However, everything appears to be futile as Shaver manages to overcome every attack directed towards him. Soon enough, Shaver catches up to Natsume and delivers a blow so powerful that it tears apart her clothes, revealing her feminine body. As Shaver continues to disrespect Natsume, Harutora recalls back to the time when Natsume gave him a binding mark. He calls his internal power and suddenly begins to see everyone's spiritual presence along with Shaver's. With his heightened ability, Harutora delivers Shaver a powerful blow which finally culls him. With the fight over, Kyoko calls Natsume a liar. At the agency, Amami and Miyachi come to give Chief Kurahashi Genji the report but learn that he's with Takiko and had planned everything. The following night, Harutora finds Natsume on the rooftop and assures her that everything will be fine. However, she expresses her worry over meeting Kyoko at school. Later on, Kon tells Harutora that his spiritual level is unstable, but Harutora assures her that he'll be fine. Upon returning school, Natsume apologizes to her class fellows, but they all thank her for saving them from Shaver's assault the previous day. Meanwhile, as Kyoko enters the class, Harutora rushes to apologize to her, but she reveals that the boy she thought was Natsume was actually him. All of a sudden, Harutora recalls his childhood memories and remembers meeting Kyoko. After indirectly confessing to Harutora about her long-standing crush on him, Kyoko finds herself alone and miserable. Suzuka then arrives to cheer her up by being a brat. The following day, Harutora learns that the Tsuchimikado residence's mysterious caught fire. 3 hours prior to the disappearance of the Tsuchimikado family, Tsuchimikado Yasuzumi is greeted by mages from the agency who reveal that they're here to apprehend him. Yasuzumi sends a retired divine general, Chizuru, to defeat Marin when Miyachi enters the scene and manages to retrieve the Raven's Wing from Yasuzumi and then burns the estate. Takiko greets Natsume and Harutora, revealing that she's here to explore the school today. In the meantime, Genji is approached by a mysterious man who appears to be Princess Takiko's henchman. In the meantime, Takiko learns about the Tsuchimikado family's disappearance and comes clean to Harutora and Natsu, revealing that the shamanic bureau laid siege on the estate because Yasuzumi has been avoiding his duties. However, she clarifies that they were originally never supposed to harm him. Furthermore, Takiko tells Natsume that she's Yaku's reincarnation. Believing Takiko of being another fanatic, Harutora asks her what she wants. Takiko reveals that she wants to properly communicate with them and asks Natsume for a duel. Back at Genji's office, the strange man asks him if it was rational of him to kill Amami, but Genji reveals that it was Takiko's decision. Meanwhile, just when the fight is about to get interesting, Jin appears and tells them all to stop. Having been interrupted, Takiko decides to make her leave. Later on, Natsume approaches Kyoko to apologize. After a little back and forth, the two manage to make peace, but Kyoko reveals that she's in love with Harutora. Later that day, Kyoko gets a call from Takiko who asks her to help sort out things between her and Natsume. Kyoko naively asks her if she's fighting Natsume because she learned about her true gender. Natsume dreams about the time when her entire life took a 360. It was after junior high when her father told her to start dressing like a boy. This pushed her to loneliness, so Natsume decided to make a familiar and spend as much time as possible with Harutora. In the meantime, Genji fails to understand how Natsume can be a girl as he detected the aura of a male child when he visited Yasuzumi and his pregnant wife years ago. Takiko angrily asks the reason behind such a bluff. Genji reveals that it was probably done by Yasuzumi to prevent the awakening of Yaku. Upset by the speculation, Takiko leaves the room and tells her familiar cryptically that they must awaken Harutora. Later that afternoon, Natsume tells Tauji that a man with one arm warned her about future chaos and asked her to keep Harutora away from the Raven's Wing. Tauji speculates that the person could be Kakajiauki Aka, the one-armed ogre. Whilst enjoying the festival, Natsume and Harutora are greeted by Takiko, who informs Natsume that she has been a substitute as the real reincarnation of Yaku is Harutora, who had been placed under a curse by Yasuzumi. With that, she releases the Raven's Wing who possesses Harutora, causing him to go astray. Seeing Harutora out of control, Natsume realizes that she must remove Yasuzumi's seal on Harutora in order to save him. However, during the process, Natsume ends up gravely injured. As Harutora tries to check up on Natsume, Tauji appears beside him and tells Harutora that Natsume has been Isekai-ed to a world where she's a slime. Not wanting to give up on Natsume's divine cheeks, Harutora asks Suzuka to help him revive Natsume by performing the Taisen Fukan ritual. Suzuka rejects the idea and tries to talk sense into him, but Harutora tells her that since Natsume died because of him, he'll sacrifice himself to bring her back. Then, out of nowhere, the mysterious man appears. Suzuka's eyes widen as she calls the man father. The man then introduces himself as Yashimaru and reveals that when he was alive, he went by Shido Dernji. Yashimaru calls Harutora as Yaku's reincarnation and offers his services to bring back Natsume. However, Suzuka warns him, stating that her father used to the leader of the Twin Horn Syndicate. Yashimaru once again tells Harutora to hurry if he wants to save Natsume, and with that disappears. In the meantime, the exorcism department arrives to apprehend Harutora and his friends. As they all return to Onmyo prep to inform Mio about the events that transpired, Miyachi arrives to tell Mio that from now on, Harutora will be in their custody. In the meantime, Yashimaru tells Genji how he met Harutora but his memories haven't awakened yet. Genji tells him that they should be wary of Yasuzumi and his followers along with Jin. Yashimaru tells Genji that tackling Jin will be a problem, which makes Genji contact Kagami and tasks him with taking care of Jin. On the other hand, Jin contacts the High Priest and asks him for backup as they'll infiltrate the Shamanic Bureau. As Tauji and friends begin to plot a way to get to Harutora, they come to learn that Tenma has escaped. This upsets Suzuka, but the rest remain positive. In the meantime, Harutora is greeted by a strange man who informs him that when he was alive, he was known as Muto, but now he's Takiko's familiar. Hearing Takiko's name, Harutora inquires about her and learns that she took it pretty hard after learning about Natsume's passing. Muto then leads to the chief's room where Harutora is greeted by Genji. Seeing him, Harutora recalls how he received an anonymous tip about Genji being the real enemy. Yashimaru informs Harutora about the Taisen Fukan ritual, stating that it works in many different ways. One way might be to sacrifice another soul to bring back the dead, while another method might involve raising the dead as a familiar. Harutora asks Genji why he wants to revive Yaku. Genji reveals that during the Pacific War, Yaku unified different methods of sorcery to create a very practical style called the shamanic arts. Now the Sauma and Kurahashi wish for him to descend on the throne as Yaku once more. In the meantime, Jin appears with the high priest, who turns out is none other than Daman. As Harutora agrees to join hands with Genji and Yashimaru, Kon appears and warns him not to do so. After listening to her, Harutora raises arms against them. During the battle, Taoji appears to aid Harutora. Tenma is greeted by Suzu, who states that she knows he's about to infiltrate the shamanic bureau, and reveals that she's going to help him do so. As Tenma infiltrates the bureau, he notices his mother's trick spider, who helps him as he makes his way through the chaos. Soon enough, Tenma frees the Raven's Wing and asks him to help Harutora. In the meantime, Jin realizes that the Raven's Wing has been freed and bids Kagami farewell by blinding him. Similarly, Daman tells Miyachi that he intends to finish their fight, but also playfully assures him that unleashing the Raven's Wing wasn't his doing. After securing Harutora, the group manages to escape with Tenma in tow thanks to Yasuzumi's quick spell. After reaching a safe distance, Tenma tells Harutora that Suzu has offered to help him with the ritual. Just when Harutora is about to accept Suzu's help, Kaguya arrives to stop him, stating that forbidden spells aren't child's play. All of a sudden, Kyoko faints and her soul seeps out of her body. She realizes that she's using astrology and tells Harutora that Natsume is waiting for him. Jin appears on site and helps his students by stopping Kaguya. As Harutora makes his way to retrieve Natsume, he's stopped by Kagami, who attacks him and Kon. Just when he's about to kill Kon, Harutora shields her by using his body. Seeing Harutora in pain, Kon unleashes her real form. As Harutora witnesses Kon's magic, he recalls the past and calls Kon as Hishimaru. Kagami summons Shaver, which gives Hishimaru a tough time. However, luckily, Kakajiauki arrives on time. Seeing Yaku's familiars, Kagami decides that it's best to flee. Similarly, Daman arrives to meet Jin and brings along Amami's battered body. Seeing his superior, Kaguya withdraws his sword and says that he's leaving. In the meantime, Harutora meets up with Takiko, who ends up handing Natsume to him, expressing her guilt for causing Natsume's death. With Natsume's body in his possession, Harutora arrives at the altar where Suzu awaits him. The next day, Suzu calls Tenma, but everyone impatiently asks her about the outcome of the ritual. Suzu vaguely reveals that Natsume and Harutora are both alive, technically, and ends the call with that. Sometime later, Natsume wakes up and finds Harutora. After sharing a kiss, Harutora tells her that they'll meet again someday. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe to the channel for more plot-filled recap.